Talk about memory lane. Look at that, Shadow Creek. Shadow Creek Apartments here in Santa Rosa, California. And just across kitty corner from Shadow Creek Apartments is a beautiful, stunning park called Spring Lake and Howard Spring Lake and Annandale Park and what have you. And many years ago, about 20 years ago, when I was living hand to mouth, I used to drive on my way past this Shadow Creek almost every day to go over to the park and do my running back in the days when I was running 3-4 miles a day. And I used to drive past this place called Shadow Creek, and I knew that this was probably one of the most expensive places that you could ever want to live in Santa Rosa. The apartments were just gorgeous. And I was living hand to mouth, and I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. Usually it was coming from like a happy hour or something like that. And I used to drive past this sign, and I used to tell myself, every time I drive past this sign, I say, one day, I'm going to live at Shadow Creek. Come hell or high water, one day I'm going to live at Shadow Creek Apartments. And interestingly enough, as I was driving past that sign one day, I just thought to stop in. I thought to stop into Shadow Creek Apartments and see how much an apartment would cost here. I was just curious. I had to have a goal in mind if I were going to ever achieve that dream of living here. And I had to have some type of a realistic goal in mind. So I stopped in here, and the manager's name at the time was Catherine. Catherine was the manager, and Carrie was the assistant manager. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I walked in and I was asking them if they had any apartments for rent, or what, not for rent, but asking them how much the apartments were. I might have even parked right here at the future resident. You know, it's kind of like the saying from Napoleon Hill, anything the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And I was conceiving it, and I was believing it. And I walked right across this bridge that day, and I walked right into that leasing office right there. And I asked them, how much are apartments? And they started asking me some questions about my income. Well, it turns out, as luck would have it, actually it wasn't luck, it was as God's favor would have it. It turns out that the Shadow Creek Apartments, these upscale apartments, when they got the building permit to build these apartments, they did so by signing an agreement with the city that they would maintain a certain percentage of housing for lower income individuals, such like myself at the time. So I was in luck. I actually got an apartment. They said that I could move in, and I would move into an apartment that would normally go for, I don't know what it was, $1,500 a month at the time. I could move in for about $800 a month, well within my budget. And so here was the pool that I spent quite a bit of time at. I spent a lot of time at this pool, and just over there, just over by the gazebo there, was the tub, the hot tub, and that was the spot of the tub club, the nightly tub club. We would meet every night there, come hell or high water, usually at about 9 o'clock, and there was a group of about 5 or 6 of us, and we would come down and we would have a tub club, and we would have we would come down with our wine and our cigars, and we would just sit there and do all types of talking and what have you, late into the night. I think security came by, and they would ask us to leave. There's a gentleman doing a selfie, but they would come by and they would usually round us out at about 10 o'clock. But anyway, one night I came down to the tub club, and I told the guys, I said, listen, I've got an idea. And they said, what's your idea? And I said, I'm going to build a website. I'm going to learn how to do web design. And I'm going to build a website, and I'm going to call it Europe with a Smile. And they say, what are you going to do with this website, Europe with a Smile? And I say, well, I'm going to go out and, so here's the jacuzzi right there. There is the, that's where we would have our nightly meetings, right there. So I told them, I said, you know, what I'm going to do with this website is I'm going to build a database of all the finest hotels in Europe, only the best hotels. And I'm going to send an email to these hotels asking them if they'll let me stay for free in exchange for being mentioned on my website's I recommend section. And they all told me, they said, you're crazy. They said it'll never work. It'll never work. You'll never get hotels to let you come and stay for free. And most often, as I have done over the course of my lifetime, when people tell me something and it'll never work, I don't listen to them. You know, if you listen to people every time they tell you something will never work, then you know, you're not going to get very far in life. So I went ahead and I built that website, and the rest, they say, is history. I traveled, well, that opened the door to traveling the world, and needless to say, here I am 15 or 20 years later, and in a much different position in life than I was. But these were my apartments. This was my very first apartment, right there. Right there was my very first apartment. I think the unit number was 833, if I'm not mistaken. And that was my bedroom right behind that patio. And used to sit and play chess with my dad on that patio right there. Dad and I used to sit, and we would play chess together on that patio and have a nice dinner. And every night I would go to sleep listening to the sound of that right there. Every night. It was just beautiful. And then just up here was an older woman named Twyla. And boy, I was really fond of her. She was well into her 70s. And I used to go over and visit with her all the time. Good old Twyla was her name. And then I came and went from these apartment complexes 2 or 3 times. And another time, my apartment complex, I believe, or my apartment rather, was this one, right up there at the top. So I had moved from the bottom floor. I think I moved out only to move back in to the apartments. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the apartment number was 833 as I walk around. You know, they say you can never go back, but boy, it sure feels like I'm going back. Let's see if I was correct. No, it was 814. So 814 was the apartment number, not 833. But this is where the story gets interesting. I had moved into these apartments not too long after I'd become born again. Here comes the born again part. I had moved into these apartments not too long after I'd become born again, and my life was being turned around. My life did a 180, and that was when I met Julie. Julie was a beautiful Swiss Italian girl that I met down in Petaluma, and I thought that. I'm sorry. I know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, what are you doing?
You're John.
Man?
John?
Yeah.
John, hey, Tom Hall. Oh, no, you don't want to be on the camera. Okay.
No, we were just wondering what you were doing.
No, I'm telling my story. Oh. I'm telling my story. Where are you? Back over here?
We're at the pool.
Okay, I'll be back. Yeah. I'll come back and say hi. All right. So he was getting a little bit worried, wondering who is this guy walking around doing his video. But back to the story. So I met Julie. And I thought Julie was God's gift to me, you know, for becoming a Christian. And boy, I was crazy about her until she broke my heart. She broke my heart, and it shattered into about 1 million little pieces. And in doing so, I used to come down here to this little area here, and I would just basically cry in my beer. And one night I came down here, and I was looking out, sitting on this little table down here, and I thought this would be a beautiful spot for a garden. This would be an absolutely beautiful spot for a garden. So I approached the management and I asked them, I said, could I build a community garden? Would you let me build a community garden? And they said, well, why don't you go around, and if you have enough residents that are interested, we'll match any donations that come from the residents. And I did. I walked around the apartment complex, and I raised the better part of about $400, getting $20 donations at a time. And this is the garden that Tom built. This is the garden that a broken heart built. Well, you look at this. And to come back all these years later and see this garden here is just incredible. Look at this. This is the garden that I built. And boy, I used to come down here all the time. I used to come down here in the morning and have my morning tea. And I used to come down here in the evening and have my glass of wine. But look at this. Actually, if you go onto Google Earth, or even Google Maps, and just type in 4145 Shadow Lane, 4145 Shadow Lane, you will see this this beautiful garden that I built years ago. It is I built this fence, I put in the water, I did everything, and look at this. It's just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. To come back here and see this garden in as beautiful of shape as it is really is something else. Look at that. Boy, they just got everything growing in here, much as I did years ago. Wow, just fantastic. Is that something or what, folks? Down at the end they have parsnip skip down there. Look at that. Wow, there's parsnip skip. That's something. Really, really something else. To come back here and see this and know that it was my broken heart that was the inspiration to have built this garden here. Nama sage, absolutely fantastic. Wow, mushroom Maggie. Look at that. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right. So there's there's the story behind the garden that Tom built, if you will. Look at that. All right. So I got to go explain myself now. That gentleman that was here was a maintenance guy. So have a great day, everybody. Take care.